Hi, I am Tim from Uniform, and in this video or conference talk, we will discuss personalization for modern e-commerce. And what I mean by modern is this e-commerce website has its architecture created by best-of-breed components that are all composed together, like a headless CMS, a headless e-commerce, and headless DAM system, but also Vue Storefront as its front end, which is also one of those modern tools. And we are now here at the Vue Storefront Summit, so let's use Vue Storefront, right? So before we dive into personalization, let's talk a bit about me, who I am, and then later why I think I can actually talk to you about this stuff, right? So my name is Tim Bennix, and I was born and raised in Amsterdam, but now I live in France. And so if you hear a strange accent, that's where this comes from. First and foremost, I work at Uniform as a developer advocate. At Uniform, we do a whole bunch of stuff for modern frontends and connecting all those, those components in your new platform for the architecture that I just spoke about. We also do personalization, and that's where we're going to be focusing today. Next to working at Uniform, I also work as an ambassador for Cloudinary, for Nuxt, and for Algolia. And most companies I represent actually all are in the Mac Alliance, of which I am also in the Tech Council. So it's all fitting like a glove. Everything is nice and connected together. Next to all this, I love speaking at conferences. I love being in person with people. Hopefully next year we'll get that again. Anyways, for now, let's make the best of this virtual connection that we have. In lieu of all of this, I also really enjoy making YouTube videos. So you will most likely see this talk on YouTube as well. So what does all of this have to do with personalization, right? Actually, I have worked at agencies or technical agencies or digital agencies, whatever you want to call it, for my whole career, right? I worked at Valtech and at AKQA and a bunch of smaller ones before that. And at these agencies, we worked for brands like these. This is just a subset of what we did. I've had the privilege of working at the highest level of websites, e-commerce platforms, campaigns with these brands. And you know what? All of them, without exception, wanted personalization in almost every project. And you know what? It was just really hard to do over the years to get this personalization in. And this is not to badmouth those agencies. We did do personalization. It just was a lot of effort. It was really complicated. And so we never really succeeded in the blue sky vision that we had to pitch or that we actually were asked of by our clients. And so in the end, doing that whole personalization thing was just very, very expensive in multiple facets, right? It was hard on performance. It was hard because we needed to find the skills in the people, how to set up the rules, processes. There's a whole bunch of stuff that makes it complex. We'll talk about that in a sec. And you know what? Even though these clients are rich enough to be doing this stuff, they were actually spending it on their architecture, on their agencies that they needed to ask about personalization. It was just really challenging. And so let's talk about now what personalization should be. What should be the relationship between your content and the user contextualized to their journey? Because if you don't really do personalization, the story is less cool for the user and it's harder to actually sell stuff. And so combine that with the fact that it's really expensive, slow, challenging to deal with, you get specific experiences. And so now let's show you an analogy of what the content story of a user in your content should be to actually get great conversion and great personalization. So imagine a bromance between two dudes. So this is the love story of the user and the content, right? They haven't seen each other for a while. They make eye contact. They greet each other the way they used to do it. They really connect again and they kind of banter and reinforce their relationship. And once they have done that, they actually take action and engage. And in this case, find the predator, right? But what lots of websites do, and this is a combination of just personalization is a bit complicated, the way it used to be done, right? plus not knowing how to do it, all of that stuff together, they kind of just do this. Take action. You go to the website, buy me. That love story that you create between your content actually creates amazing conversion. So e-commerce sites that actually engage their users with personalized context or content in the right context have 19% higher conversion. One does not simply ignore 19% higher conversion. Imagine you have 1 million sales a month. What does 19% more conversion give you? That is huge. That's really important. So now let's talk about, so we already alluded a bit to this, like why don't most e-commerce websites actually personalize? Well, like I said, it's pretty complicated, or at least it used to be. But let's talk about that a bit later, right? So you tend to have or to need people with skills to understand what personalization actually is, how to set it up, how to draw the story, things like that. There is generally a high starting cost because let's say you have a suite approach like an Adobe or a Sitecore or a Hybris. That's an expensive software package that you just need to purchase. Then you need to go to an agency to implement it. Then you need to design it. Then you do your storytelling. There's a high startup cost to get anything done in those systems. That's fine because they give you everything. You will just go to some professional services people and they help you to put it in. But still, the startup cost is pretty high, right? And on top of that, they are rules-based, which means there's kind of a lot of complexity in like, if this persona, then do that, or do this, or there's a lot of if else, if then kind of statements going on, and it's really hard to scale that up, right? And then there's the next thing. You might say, why don't you just throw some AI at it? Because there's a bunch of companies that now do AI and search results and stuff like that. And you know what? That's awesome. But most brands on their websites or in their marketing structure or stuff like that, they don't have enough structured data to give to the AI to actually make informed decisions. Because what you might get without enough structured data is on Thursdays, people click that button more. Sure, that's fun. Why don't you just do something with that? But the person that is interacting with your website doesn't really care that it's Thursday, right? So you can get some kind of improvement, but it's not really the love story that we just saw from Predator, right? So, and then there's the process, what do we do? How do we set it up? How do we govern our whole story to make sure that the whole company understands it? Pretty challenging. And then the next big chunk is, like I said, it's pretty slow. And so let's talk about why it's slow, but also note that I say traditional personalization. So let's talk about what traditional personalization is and what other variations we have right now. So let's start with the traditional one, the suite approach, the best of suite, the Sitecores, the Hybris, the Adobe AEM, the Epi servers, the WordPresses, things like that. So if you implement it, you kind of, personalization that is, you kind of have to follow strictly how the front end has decided for you how the templates work, right? So then also it's first party. It's all included because it's in the suite, but sometimes it's also challenging to figure out architecturally. So it's sometimes separate infrastructure. Think of XDB for Sitecore, for example. Then how to actually use it. It's rules-based, the if-else stuff, right? That's really hard to scale operationally because if you have all those rules and you have 1,000 components to personalize, that's lots of rules. That's really hard to scale between people, not just servers. And generally, there's rather limited analytics on if something is personalized, who uses it, what all that looks like. Of course, there's some exceptions here, but this is generally the point. Of course, the execution is first party and it's origin based, right? The suite has its origin server. The front end user comes in. We have to check in what persona or rule that user fits. Ask the server, give me something, return this to the screen, personalize the content. That generally takes between 800 and 1200 milliseconds. Imagine Amazon having to do this on a suite basis, adding 1200 milliseconds to every page load. That's a big no-no for everybody, right? That's just a challenge. Okay, let's talk about third-party scripts. That's like the next step up that a bunch of companies have started doing. So it's a third-party script that changes your HTML structure, basically. That does require a script tag to add third-party on top, and that actually is generally a big file that is render blocking. So for using, it's again rules-based, but you just do that in the third-party system rather than in your own suite software. They do have a bunch of their own models to try to do AI-based stuff. It actually kind of works well. And then you have really specific analytics, but only generally in their system. So it's kind of far away. To execute it, it's third party, so not first party. And it's also origin based, but then of your third party script host, right? It's generally around 300 to 400 milliseconds for a response to get it in. But you're also loading this huge JavaScript file that is render blocking. So it's kind of slow overall. Then there is the last one, API first, and this is where Uniform lives. So implementation-wise, it's decoupled, but it does ship with your app. So you're kind of adding this decoupled tracker like an NPM package. You add it into your code base. Then we have Practitioner Rules, which is basically you have personalized content, but you do that within the third-party or headless CMS that you are using. Then it is not rules-based, but it's semi-automated. You kind of have scoring. And how that works, I'll show you in a sec. And then it connects to your existing analytics. So it's not living on its own anywhere. It's just hooks into. So you can make it as rich or as poor of an experience if you want to, personalization-wise or analytics-wise, I mean. And then the execution type is back to first party because it's connected to your code. But it can be either on hydration time when your component is rendered. I'll show you that in a sec. Or it can be edge-based if you don't have JavaScript. And then it's like 50 milliseconds. So it's basically on the edge workers of your CDN, which is hyper fast. So now that we have those three systems, right, let's talk about how the suites are behaving nowadays and how we are going towards a more modern architecture. And so initially we had the suite, as you can see on the screen, right? All the chunks that we just discussed, like CRM to CMS to commerce to personalization, front-end, it's all in one big suite and they have little locks connecting them. It's one awesome big system. And then over time, like 2-3 years ago, we started to actually extract certain chunks out of the suite because we wanted more control as developers and clients. We wanted to iterate faster. We wanted to change certain chunks. Costs a bunch of money, but totally possible, right? So we started to, grab the front end and maybe made a Jamstack website and put that on Netlify. Or maybe it's actually a Node.js running app in Azure and we have an API layer. There's a whole bunch of stuff that was happening over time. And then maybe a year ago, more and more was taken out of the suite and only the CMS remained. And actually, current day, the CMS is no longer in the suite because if the CMS was in the suite, that would also show it's the center of gravity of everything. Like it's the sun and planets around it. That's no longer true. All those points, all those CRM, API, hosting, whatever, they're all equally important now. And personalization is just one of those chunks, API first. Right. So what did we learn? Traditional personalization is slow, right? It's origin-based. It's hard to get, but it's also complicated to set up. But what we also learned is that the conversion is 19% higher. That's a bit of a dilemma, right? But you probably know where I'm going. Because what if you could have this awesome performance and all this great conversion, right? Are you ready to actually see that this is relatively easy to set up nowadays? Well, I just did that. So why not go to the browser and show you all of this awesomeness? All right, we are on the homepage, and as you can see, I'm running Vue Storefront in Nuxt, because it's based on that, on localhost, because I like living on the edge. I'm a developer, right? So, as you can see, These are the Storefront Ui components, and these fellas are coming from Contentful at the moment. And you can see it's general spring styles. You have a mix of female, male, or women's and menswear, a generic component you can shop. So let's do a journey. I'm a dude, right? So what I want to go to men's because I need a new jacket. So I'm visiting a menswear page, categories, a whole bunch of stuff. And so I browse around, and for the purposes of the demo, I won't. But when I go back home, now suddenly these components from Contentful have actually changed. This is now focused on menswear, and you can see they are the hottest jackets for him. So let's reset our personalization and do the other journey. So we can actually now look at our little cool tools about personalization, or our developer tools basically. You can see that I clicked on male. There was a behavior tracking that is now scored 50%, and it's 100% showing male. So let's just reset this stuff so you're back to basics. And now let's click on women. So now I go into the women funnel, as we say, and I go back, and suddenly latest spring wear for her, and the hero is also about women. And of course, if I click on man then on woman, they have equal scores. So potentially what you could do is, based on those equal scores, make a component about unisex, for example. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can do here. And these little developer tools, they really help you. Because if I want to just reset everything and go female 50, there it is. If I want to go then add male on top of that, which is 75, suddenly it's a stronger score. And you can see how fast this is, because this is all done on hydration. How that all connects, we show you in a second. So let's go back to the slides to tell you what you have just seen with a little bit more of informational backup, shall we say. All right, back to the slides. So let's talk about what you just saw, right? So we had an intent, which means I was a dude wanting to look at menswear. That's my intent. I intend to look at menswear. Then we had a signal, which in this case was relatively simple. I went to a page, and so the signal was behavioral tracking. So it tracks based on a little function that you see below. We also have a bunch of different signals, like a query string or maybe a cookie. There's different approaches here. And then, based on my intent and the signal, I went back to the homepage, and the component was personalized based on the intent that I had as a user. So let's talk about how that personalized component actually works, because it's kind of a wrapper for variations of a specific component, right? So in the first look, we had the variation default. It was just spring stuff. We didn't know about the user yet. Then I did an intent, go to menswear, or in this case, women's. Sorry, slide is different than my story. So I went to the women's spring collection campaign, and when I came back to the homepage, the variation that the personalized component was showing was actually the women's wear. And then, of course, now the story ends up again when I go to the menswear collection, and then I go back home. Based on my intent and my tracking signal, my behavioral signal, it was showing the men's campaign. And this actually happened with the banner or the hero, and it also happened with the product list. And basically the personalized component, the wrapper that wraps those variations to show, is in Contentful, and then those variations are in Contentful as well. So how does this connect, you ask? Well, let me show you. All right, so we are now in the uniform dashboard, and let's talk about how everything connects. And it all starts with uniform. So in here we have our dashboard, and one part of the uniform dashboard is about personalization. And so the intents that we just saw about menswear and women's wear are actually here, male and female. And so inside the intents, we actually have signals, right? So right now we have a behavioral signal, which means you go somewhere, it tracks it, that's your behavior, and it's a strength of 50. There are also a bunch of other types of signals, right? So it can be a cookie, so it remembers you. It can be a query string that you click, let's say, on a Facebook link. And because you click that, a certain campaign happens, and that's then your intent. There's a whole bunch of things we can do. And so basically this is where it starts. And now let's have a look how that connects in Contentful. Now in Contentful, here I just clicked apps, manage apps, and I went to the uniform optimize app. This is kind of the overview with my API key. You can see we have the 2 intents. We can actually open uniform from here. And so what we've done is these intents become a tag, like a little field that attaches to a component. And so the components here are product list and banner. And so we have a banner can have an intent tag like male, female, whatever. And then there's also components that are actually a wrapper around multiple variations, right? So we have the personalized banner that you put on the homepage that wraps the non-personalized banner, the male personalized banner, and the female personalized banner. So let's have a look at this one first. So the banner content type actually has the intent tags field here because we added that in our uniform app configuration. So now when we look at a banner component itself, let's have a look at the women's component. You can actually see that it has all the stuff you just saw on the page, right? And then there's actually the intent tag female. You can also add male, but not in this case because it's the female banner. So when we then go to the male banner, we actually see male here. That's how it kind of connects up. And so if we now go to the personalized banner, that's the one that we're putting on the homepage, which is the wrapper for all of them, you can actually see that it has a reference field of multiple references to the female, the male, and the default version. The default is non-personalized. And then based on the tracking that we do on the website, it either shows you the female, the male, or the non-personalized version. And so that's the way it all connects up. Let's have a quick look in the code to see how that works. And after that, let's just add another banner based on a certain type of personalization. So then in the code, what we have done to make this work on Jamstack and front-end sites to make it super fast, we actually have a CLI, Uniform Optimized. And Uniform Optimized CLI on build, because it says here on dev, we run multiple generate intents and then run Nuxt, right? So it downloads a manifest JSON file. So on build, it downloads this file, and that's this JSON file here. So we have intents with female and male here. And this is now in your JavaScript bundle, which means if it's in the bundle, it can do something on hydration because you can just check which types do I have, right? And so this is how it all connects. And why don't we add another intent? Because why not? Living on the edge, right? Let's try it. So let's add another intent. Let's say we like bags. We like shopping for bags. Sure. And we call it bags. Add another bag intent. So my intent is that I enjoy shopping for bags. And so let's also add a simple behavior. Behavior bags, similar as the rest. So now let's publish this stuff. So now when I click publish, and I do another npm or yarn dev, it will grab this stuff and put that also in our code base. But first, let's have a look at Contentful because here it says intents too, right? So let's refresh. And then it takes a bit. Here it goes. Still loading. There it is. And now it has 3 intents. Interesting stuff. So let's rerun our local stuff. So we actually get back that intent manifest. So everything is there. So let's go to the code and see if it is actually here. Now, actually, this file has bags in it. Okay, so let's add one in Contentful and see if that all works. We do need a little bit of code later on to be able to track a bag page, right? But let's first just add some Contentful content. So we are at that personalized banner. And what we want, if we have visited a page about bags, we want the homepage to change, right? Okay, so let's add a new banner, a personalized one. So we call it bags. Oh no, this is not the correct one. This is a banner component. Let's just keep it simple and add all of this here. We're linking to the bags page. And I have already uploaded an image. That makes things easier. And then there is the intent tag. And here we select bags. So when our intent of the user was bags, we have that in the code. We can match that to our JSON file and then show the right component. So let's publish all this stuff. And we also need to publish this guy. So we now created a new banner, and then we put that into the homepage banner, which then wraps this stuff and should potentially show everything. So the one thing we are lacking right now is that we are tracking a user that visited the bags page in our code. So let's go there first. So for now, I'm going to keep it simple. In the product page, I'm just going to do this. We're tracking the bags behavior. For real code, this is not the way to go. But for demo purposes, I'm just adding a track behavior thing in our uniform optimized plugin in Nuxt, and it should work. Okay, so it should work, I tell you. Let's just refresh first. Oh, it already personalized that way. That is interesting. Let's have a look. Actually, it felt like it already had some. It could be the history of my browser. So let's just reset the sliders and go to a bag. So right now I clicked on women. So it's now going to be personalizing for women, right? Let's click on a bag. So this is now a bags page, but potentially we want to go to another page and maybe another bag. And so let's go back home and see what happened. Okay, so it's bags again now because we visited like 3 or 4 bags pages, right? And so let's see in our DevTools, it found bags. And so if I wanted to change that to female and set the score, now it's female like that. And when I add bags to 75, now suddenly it's bags. So there's all this pretty cool stuff that you can do this way. And then like now let your imagination run wild and start adding stuff like this. And if your code is solid, it's actually pretty simple to do all of this. Okay, back to the slide. So now that you've seen that this was actually pretty simple, it is JavaScript focused, right? So if you don't have JavaScript, what happens? Well, we also created this in the way that it can work with edge workers, because there's a bunch of CDNs now that are programmable, like Akamai, Cloudflare, Netlify. And so they have edge workers like Lambda functions or longer running functions where we can also do this, and then you actually do not need JavaScript. So this is a little bit more of an advanced feature that I'm not going to go into for now, but we're happy to show you later if you wanted to see that. And actually, we have a bunch more stuff for personalization on eCommerce. It actually goes way, way deeper. So if you want to know more about that, ask us on uniform.dev and then sign up, because we can talk to you about enrichments, which is basically you can enrich and fine tune your personalization based on properties of products. For example, let's say blue t-shirts. When you like blue t-shirts, when you click on that, we can personalize in a smaller fine-tuned way that you will then only see blue t-shirts, for example, or blue items, stuff like that. You can go on and very deep, but that's not for this talk. So for now, if you wanted to know more, reach out to me directly or go to uniform.dev and sign up. I want to thank you for watching this pretty long and intense talk. And if you liked it, please subscribe to my YouTube channel or visit uniform.dev to know more. Anyways, cheers.